Everyone hear me okay? I apologize in advance. I just kicked laryngitis from my hectic travel schedule last week. So if I go on a coughing fit, I've got some water here. I hope I don't lose my voice, but should be good. So everyone having a good time so far? Awesome. So welcome to Decepticon. Basically, these are my deceptive techniques to derail attempts at open source intelligence, OSINT gathering. Before we get started, the thoughts and opinions I express today are mine and mine alone and do not represent those of IBM. The reason I say this, I'm a senior security architect at IBM. I'm the 2017 DerbyCon Social Engineering Capture the Flag winner. I do blogs, I do podcasts. I have my own blog and podcast, Advanced Persistent Security, and I tap out a lot in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. They say you either win or you learn. I think I learn a lot because I always tap. But aside from that, this is the trophy from the Social Engineering Capture the Flag. I'm a very vocal person, very outgoing, and the picture there to the right is the one time in my life that I can actually think of I was speechless. So it's a rare occurrence. About Decepticon, basically I want to talk about where we can find OSINT. This is actually going to start out as an offensive OSINT talk because I want you to understand where and how I'm going to gather OSINT on you as a target prior to arming you with some techniques to make it harder for me. To make it a little bit more clear, I don't implement a lot of these things that I'm going to tell you for myself. I'm framing this from the perspective of I'm a practitioner. These are things you can do to make my life harder. So aside from that, we'll talk about some online deception, maybe some decoy accounts, canaries, of course, to some degree, encryption. We can't talk OSINT without mentioning social media. That's just a requirement. And we'll talk about identity management, not to be confused with identity and access management. I'm talking about the things when small credit reporting bureaus in Georgia get breached that you have to worry about getting stolen, that kind of identity. Not hating on anyone specifically, to be honest. So where can we find OSINT? Well, most of the time it's on the internet. There are other methods as well. Newspapers, conference proceedings. Anytime you deal with like IEEE or ACM, they are going to publish conference proceedings. To some degree, the fact that this video is recorded and will be published online, that provides OSINT about the speakers. Any anecdotes that we tell about our personal lives could be used against us later. It gives people an idea of what we look like, what we sound like, our hobbies, our interests, anything of that nature. Of course, you have your academic journals. With those, you have to think of it from the perspective of this is what this college is interested in, this is what this researcher is interested in, and to some degree, you might even get an email address and a phone number, so there's a little bit of OSINT to start with. Photos. 2016 at DerbyCon, a gentleman by the name of Josh Huff, he's on Twitter at Baywolf88, he demonstrated gathering OSINT off a single photo. The photo was bragging about gas prices. So the obvious route of looking at photographic OSINT would be, what does the metadata say? Is it an iPhone? Is it an Android? Does it have GPS? Which camera was used? Which direction was the phone being held? Which version of the phone was this photo taken on? Those are all things you can get from the metadata. But Josh went a completely different way. He looked at the reflection of the glass of the gas pump, and he noticed there was a vehicle in it. So he started doing reverse image searches for this, and he enumerated that it was a 2006 to 2011 Dodge Durango. It was in this one specific color, and he did a little bit more searching, and he found that there were only 3 vehicles of that color registered within a 50-mile radius of where it was taken. With a little bit of further research, he could have found out exactly who the car belonged to. And then we have to talk about geospatial stuff. If you want to deal with that, for the most part, you're going to look at Google and Bing. That's going to be your starting point. Before I do any social engineering on anyone, I try to take what I call the drive, and that's where I will just go to one of their sites virtually with Google Maps or Bing Maps or something, and I use them both. You get different perspectives from each. but I'll take a drive using this around the building. I'm looking for things like dumpsters. Who's their dumpster company? Is there a gate? Is there a visitor center? For the social engineering capture the flag, one of the flags is who does deliveries. I saw a big brown boxy truck backed up to the building for my target. That's UPS. So flag down. How about the fence? What's there? What's the parking situation? These are all important things. You can find out where the dumpsters are if you want to go dumpster diving. It gives you some context on how to sneak in. Does anyone in here remember the shenanigans that happened a few months ago with Strava, the workout app, where some people in the US military were using it overseas, and they had logged it as base perimeter. The thing is, when you looked it up on Google Maps, there was nothing. So basically, they outed a classified base because they had labeled it base perimeter, and they went running, and they shared the data. And by sharing the data, it became accessible to anyone using the app. That's just one example. So this photo is more true than we will ever know. So when we look at it, we see that someone, ironically, I was on submarines in the Navy, so the periscope of Facebook just definitely is even more ironic. And then the fact that I think there still may be a periscope app as well for social media. But society wants to look out the periscope of social media into the world, whereas if they would just put the periscope down and open the door, they could be exposed to the world as a whole. We see things as they are framed to us via social media. And that gets into a completely different discussion for a completely different type of disinformation that I'm just not going down that rabbit hole. But nevertheless, let's talk about some major resources here. So if you want to do it from the web, inteltechniques.com is ran by Michael Basil. OSINT Framework is ran by Justin Nordin. OSINT Framework is basically it's a repository of links to other OSINT resources, things like public record searches, business records, like in the US, SEC Form 10K, that lists executives. Persona generators, so whenever I'm doing those vishing phone calls, I can keep my lies straight because I have my persona on the screen right in front of me. And if you want to take a look at that, that's under the OPSEC option on the site. But you can also do things like IP address searches, DNS searches, hashes, all of that. Intel Techniques, that's Michael Basil's personalized tools that he wrote that allows you to interact with certain things as well. There's a very nifty Facebook Live video search function. So you can go onto Facebook Live, you get the video ID, you can search on his website for that video ID and get the latitude and longitude of where that video is coming from. So just think about that when you're talking to your teenagers about their makeup tutorials that they're doing, because I'll be honest, when I do my offensive social engineering and OSINT talk, that's my favorite target. It's like, hey, look, here's a makeup tutorial. In terms of tools, I'm a huge fan of ReconNG. Hands down, that's my favorite tool. It doesn't do everything, though. So it has integrations with things like Shodan, LinkedIn, Google. It also has interactions with Have I Been Pwned. You can even input usernames, and it will go scouring to find out which other websites usernames on your list exist. That's how I found out that my SECTF target had an account on Pornhub. That was a little bit embarrassing. Didn't go into the report, but it was there. Datasploit is another good one. It does a lot of what ReconNG does, but it's more from the command line, where ReconNG, ironically enough, feels a lot more like Metasploit. With Datasploit, the biggest thing I can tell you out of that one is you can do searches on WikiLeaks. I was doing OSINT on a target in my previous position leading up to a vishing campaign, and I used Datasploit, and I found that that institution had 31,000 files on WikiLeaks. I don't know what they said because they were all in Italian, but they were there, and my security point of contact had no clue. You also have OnionScan. That was written by Sarah Jamie Lewis and meant to be a privacy tool so that when you're operating on both the dark web and the public web, that you're not using the same key. And just like Nmap, or just like a hammer, is it a tool or is it a weapon? You can use it the same way to find people who are being sloppy about running their onion sites when they have a public-facing website as well. The Harvester, I don't have a whole lot of experience with the Harvester. I've never really warmed up to it, nor have I warmed up to Spiderfoot. There used to be a tool called Foca that worked really well. It's not been updated in almost 6 years, and when you try to run it, it crashes now. So you can find a few things out of that, but not a whole lot. In terms of training, if you want to get into that, Michael Basil is the primary source that I would say to get your OSINT training from, whether it be offensive OSINT or hiding from the internet style privacy training. Chris Hadnagy has a 2-day OSINT course, and in his social engineering courses, they cover OSINT as well. Justin Seitz, a Canadian, actually, he has a Python course that actually teaches you how to interact with APIs. If you take the Python course, you actually learn how to interact with the Twitter API and get meaningful data out of it. I highly recommend it. And then Micah Hoffman has his 4-day SANS course, and it's not on the slide, but I actually, starting in June, I will have a 1-day social engineering and OSINT course through EC Council. That's actually what this t-shirt's for. So if you come to the class, you get this cool t-shirt if you want it. And I seriously did lose my password, so anyone who wants to give me their password after this presentation's over, just meet me in the back corner. I'll take them down. It'll be purely secure, I promise. I would never lead you wrong. Can you help me? And from a social engineering perspective, those are the 4 most important words you can drop. But in terms of OSINT, where else can you get OSINT? You get a little liquid courage in someone, and they're willing to tell you anything. Think of it from the perspective of a salesperson. When you've interacted with salespeople professionally, one of their first questions, tell me about the problems you face in your organization. Tell me about your environment. What was your mom's name before she was married? See how I phrased that? It's the same concept. So realistically, you could do the same thing in bars. Restaurants. There's a restaurant where I live in Tennessee. It's a Thai place. I like to sit in the bar area, and there's these little portholes that go into the dining room. You wouldn't believe the number of $500,000 deals that I've heard tank because someone doesn't know what they're doing from the social engineering perspective, just because I'm sitting there listening to the whole deal going down. And I'm learning it, which companies are going to grow, which are shrinking, who's about to try to buy whom, all sorts of things. I was walking around at Macy's Christmas around, I think, 2015 or 2016. There's a gentleman on the phone. Yes, that number is 48675303990357684. Expiration date, October 2020. Oh, the code on the back, that's 123. In the middle of Macy's. If you want to use that credit card number, have at it. It's not real. I give it to scammers all the time. If you hear the first 8 digits, the other 8 make sense. So it's 486753039. And just do it backwards. Family and friends. Who in here does not have a social media account whatsoever? Okay, siblings, parents, friends. Do they? None. Not a lot of friends or family. That almost sounds like a challenge. Because even if you don't have an account, someone you know does, there's a good chance Facebook already knows what you look like. They probably already know your political affiliation just because of pictures you've been in. Whether it's your friends, it could be venues you went to. It could be something to that nature. Back windshields. I can't count the number of times I've nearly crashed my car trying to take pictures of back windshields with interesting stickers. And I don't even know what's going on with this back windshield here in this. I mean, I really don't. Based on the halos, I'm going to assume someone died. And I'm going to assume with those 3 children, I don't know if those are stepchildren or not, but there's probably a crazy cat lady involved. I don't know. We can obviously tell that it's Baltimore as well. Additionally, forums. People typically use the same username everywhere. They use it in forums, they use it in email. wherever. That's just one way that I can trace you. A lot of mailing lists actually end up publishing everything as a forum later. I used that in the SCCTF. My target, they had a former employee that had posted for help about their storage array. Yes, he copied the configuration file. He did not sanitize anything. He gave explicit versions, a lot of information he really shouldn't have. Where did he go wrong? He didn't snip the signature block. So when I did the search for the regular expression at company.tld, there it was. Job boards, that's a double-edged sword. Indeed.com is one of my favorites for two reasons. I find out who's hiring for what. I might find out what technologies they're using. Might even find out the exact version. And then I can go searching through resumes that people have uploaded and find out even more. That's how I found out who the security company was at my target, because they worked at the target company. It said it in the resume. And then dialing it back a little bit further, looking at the previous experience, it said, I used to be a security guard for Allied Barton, working the front gate for company name. It seems harmless. It really does. Until someone puts two and two together. I can go bounce that off the careers page of the target company. During the SCCTF, my target company was hiring someone that was an Oracle ERP administrator. They wanted explicit experience with version 12.2.5. ExploitDB had two entries for Oracle ERP version 12.2.5, one of which being a SQL injection, the other being a server-side request forgery. Because it's an ERP system, there's a fairly decent possibility that's going to be public-facing. So just get that injection there, start your server-side request forgery, you can start pivoting from there. I didn't do a single port scan to find that either. Google Foo. If you're going to do OSINT, you've got to have Google Foo. And then social media, which we'll kind of get into in a bit. So here's the Google Foo. You're looking for things like phone number syntax. Do they use parentheses? Do they use periods? Do they use hyphens? Do they put a +1 at the beginning of it? How do they do it? Once you know that, you can search across Google and find it, if you know their phone number range. I addressed the job boards and the forums. With that user that had posted to the mailing list and not sanitized his signature block, I actually found his GitHub account as well. Leading to that GitHub account, I found that he had scripts for Netflix ICE, which is used to estimate your AWS costs. I found some scripts for Nagios, availability monitoring, which, okay, arguably that could be used at home. I found a few scripts for Macs, okay, that could be at home as well. But then I found a script to synchronize his Red Hat satellite server and synchronize updates. The probability of him running that much Red Hat at home is very slim. Also, he wrote in 3 different languages up until about May of 2016. According to his LinkedIn, he left the company in June 2016. He resumed posting to his GitHub in September of 2016 in 3 new languages. So now I've enumerated languages that that target company uses. Yelp, TripAdvisor, these are all places where I can find out things you like, places you've been, bad experiences that you've had, great experiences that you've had. It wasn't on a review site, which actually I'll address the review site first. For my target company was in Louisville, Kentucky. Based on scouring through employees on Yelp, on TripAdvisor, and all of that, I found out that there were 3 things that they liked: craft beer, bourbon, and they were foodies. So when I got someone on the phone, I basically said, "Happy Friday, I can't wait to get out of here. I just bought a new case of craft beer," and I had researched to find out the exact brand that I had purchased. And the person on the other end of the phone, she said, "Oh, craft beer? I love craft beer." I was like, what a coincidence. I love Fridays too. And then at that point I had instant rapport, and I was able to say, I'm working under the direction of the CISO. We have an external audit coming up. I have a few questions. It should take 3 to 5 minutes. Can you help me? And from there, I got almost every single flag out of her. So that's one example. Another example, on social media, I found out that a senior vice president of this company had tweeted to an airline complaining that he had been delayed in one airport and missed a business meeting in Amsterdam. I'm just going to make up an airline, well, sort of. Hello, this is Air Canada customer support. I understand that you had a problem with your flight to Amsterdam. I would like to help you. Can you please provide this information? More than likely, he's going to provide that information. Even if it's already been resolved, I can say that we reviewed the actions and the resolution were not up to our corporate standards. It doesn't matter because it's a game of cat and mouse. Improv tiptoes. That's what it really boils down to. So with this, anyone who knows Adrian Sanabria in the middle, his face was actually cropped out of a larger picture. A vendor at InfoSec World had an owl, and he had the owl on his hand like this, but was doing his impression. And you know, as good InfoSec people, we can't show the owl. We have to crop it to be funny. So he's always watching, though. Just keep that in mind. But within OSINT, we always hear the whole paradigm of Ermagerd collect all the dirter. Yeah, I rehearsed that, sorry. But we also hear the paradigm of we have to be like South Park's underpants gnomes. Because, you know, with them, it was step 1, collect the underpants. Step 2, step 3, profit. Within OSINT, we have the same problem. Step 1, collect all the OSINT. Step 2, step 3, weaponize it. What we're missing is step 2 and step 4. Step 2 being parse and refine the data so that you have data that you need. And then step 4 being dispose of the data in a secure manner, which we'll get into in a moment. So here's a little fun OSINT. This is a back windshield. What can we infer about this family? Mom's a teacher. Yep. So let's think of it from the perspective of we are a burglar and we want to break into this family's home. Mom's a teacher. So federal holidays, summer break, spring break, fall break, probably not good times. Or maybe they are if they go on vacation, you never know. During school hours is definitely an ideal time. John, he plays soccer. He's probably old enough to play competitive soccer. There's a good chance that his team's schedule is going to be on the internet. Neil, he's a skater. You find the local skate park, show up with a Thrasher shirt, a pair of Etnies shoes, introduce him to the Exploited or the Casualties or some other awesome punk band, and he'll probably like you for about 10 minutes. And then he'll pull his fidget spinner out and it'll be game over. Jessica, she's the curveball. Why? Because you can't tell anything about her. Is she old enough to stay by herself? Does she have any hobbies? We don't know. We'll go back to Dad for a moment. Dad is one or the other. It's a very binary thing here. He's either legitimately jacked or ripped, or the only concept of ripped he has is ripping his pants. It's one or the other. But 5 a.m. or 5 p.m., there's a good chance you're going to find him in the gym. Doesn't matter how hard he's working out, but he'll probably be there. Now comes the dogs. Ruby is a hound. Hounds make noise. In no way, shape, or form do I advocate harming the animals. So here's what I recommend doing if you're going to be a criminal and try to be successful about it. Take some dog bones. Just keep them busy. If you feed a dog, the dog will love you for life. Just don't harm them. So with regards to the collection, what can we start with? Company data. If you go to Bloomberg and search Bloomberg.com and you search for your company, your target company, you're going to find out things like the locations, the phone number, the address, maybe even the email syntax. You can find out the manager's names and any other affiliations they have, like are they on a board of directors for something else? Then we want to look at things like vendors. Who's your antivirus company? Who do you sell antivirus to? Because as an attacker, we're going to try to look at it from the perspective of what do we have to evade, right? And then affiliations, we can all think back to Target. the HVAC company had some security flaws, and that allowed the attacker to pivot into target. That's just one thing you can find out via OSINT. Social media. I love chasing PR people, but I'll tell you a secret about PR people too. They are boring. They almost never post anything of value. One exception though. They follow the people who do. My target company, their PR people were absolutely boring. They posted pictures of hummingbirds and bird baths. I was like, man, this is life on the edge here. I should mail them some garden gnomes. But they followed all of senior management that did post the fun stuff. They followed all of the C-levels, all the senior managers, and then any of the people within the organization that were known to be public speakers. Come to think of it, I have a few people from my PR department that follow me on social media. Anyway, but that's your key employees. If I want to get to the CEO, and I know the CEO is an avid runner, obviously I'm not an avid runner. I mean, I run to the refrigerator from time to time, but that's about it. But if I were working with a team, there's a good chance someone on that team could actually pose as an avid runner, get close, build rapport, ask the questions, find out what they need to know. They're an avid golfer. So it's all about context. I use the phrase, it's the context for the contact. That's what you're looking for. So for Google, you want to use innovative thinking. Things like your company name plus the phone number syntax. You're going to find all the sales, PR, and marketing people right there. You may even find legal. Okay, now the next one, you're going to do an advanced Google search against that company's website, company.tld, file type PDF, or doc, or XLS. That's going to find any PDFs, any Word docs, any spreadsheets that's out on the internet. From that, you might find some sensitive stuff like passwords. Alternatively, you may find out things like who created it, what operating system they have, what they use to open PDFs. From the perspective of the SCCTF, those are all flags. From a real-life perspective of an attacker, those are all ways that someone could exploit their way in. If they know you're using Foxit instead of Adobe, they're not going to waste their time trying to find an exploit for Adobe when they're going to look into ExploitDB or through the CVEs to see if they can find anything for Foxit, and then they can send you the malformed PDF and do what they want to do. Again, there's the same thing with the phone numbers. You're going to find a little bit more when you actually go searching across the website as opposed to the internet as a whole. And then there's Bloomberg. So I'm going to reiterate some gold mines per se. Indeed resumes, the GitHub repos. Customers, they're going to post what they love and hate about your company. Another thing I learned, employees are going to give companies 5-star reviews. And then when they leave, they're going to change it to 1 probably, maybe. Depends on the terms, but most often employees get 5-star reviews. Of course, there's the targets that we're looking for to get information. The technical staff, executives. I love targeting executives because if I can get to them, they assume that someone's already vetted me and they inherently trust me. If you spoof a call from legal to the CFO, I say this with experience, you will get domain admin on a bank without doing a port scan. It's happened before. Potential vendors. And then of course LinkedIn, where everyone is the director or chief executive something, right? So as we start the transition into the actual Decepticon, let's talk about training the people. So we can do things like rate limiting to slow my scraping of your site down, or my ability to use tools like Spiderfoot or Foca to get the information from your site. You can use canaries. So if you get an email address or an email at your canary address from someone, you immediately know that they've scraped you and you should block them. Disinformation, we're going to talk about. Segmentation and DLP we'll talk about as well. Encryption kind of works, but not really. It's worth mentioning. But of course, you've got to train the people on policies and procedures and incorporate it into your policies and procedures. Train the people. Train them about insider threat, social engineering, open source intelligence activities. Have recurring training. Yeah, you've got to have your annual 1 hour check the box training. Great, do it. Then employ quarterly or monthly training, not to exceed about 30 minutes, to keep them abreast of threats and trends that you are seeing, things that are of interest to them. I'll give you a hint. If you teach them how to protect their family, they will do that and bring it back even stronger. Role-based training, HR, accounting, sales, they are all expected to open emails with attachments and open the attachment. Train them on what to look for. Executives, the same thing, just as I stated before, they think of things from a different lens. Keep that in mind. When you're doing this, incorporate it with your incident response plan. People should know exactly how to report it, such as phone, carrier pigeon, smoke signal, text message, Slack, in person, whatever. I don't recommend doing it via email. Because if someone thinks they're breached, there's a good chance your email has been compromised. What actions do you want them to perform? What data do you want them to give you? Do you want them to unplug the yellow cable from the back of the computer or the network cable? I think of things like this from the perspective of, if I were telling my mom how to do this, what would I tell her? She's not going to know what the network cable is, but she's going to know what color yellow is. So I recommend using the same color networking cable if possible as well. If someone clicks a phish or falls victim to this, don't beat them over the head. Give them something to work with. Gamify it. Collection considerations. What is the end game? Is what you're doing ethical? Is it legal? How do you protect the data? So now, we're into DECEPTICON. Who is the adversary? What do they want? What are their capabilities? What have you done to target them? What vectors could they use? What happens when they find you? Here's some notes about OPSEC. If you want some blogs, here are some blogs. I've kind of went a little bit ahead of my time, so I'm going to have to speed up just a little bit. But if you want to opt out, here's a link to a Google Drive that will actually give you links to opt out of anything you could possibly want to opt out of. Secure internet usage. I'm not saying don't use Google. Calculate the risk. Use a VPN. Be careful of your browser extensions and your add-ons. They may or may not be vetted. Vulnerability management is low-hanging fruit. Cloud storage. Leaking Amazon S3 buckets. That's something to keep in mind. The file metadata. What can I pull from the file if I download it? There's a tool called Streisand. If you don't trust VPNs that you want to pay for, you can actually stand it up. That's a link to the GitHub. You stand it up on your own cloud instance. You'll have your own VPN concentrator, your own Tor bridge, your own ShadowSogs proxy, everything at your fingertips. You control everything. You're only at the mercy of your cloud provider. Deception. We have disinformation and we have deception. So, sock puppet accounts, fake email addresses, social media. You can do phone and payment. I mean, the Sudo app allows you to have an email address, a phone number, and you can even do payments through Sudo Pay. Deception, you have honey things like honey pots, honey jobs, honey docs, whatever. And you have canaries. Let's talk about disinformation briefly. We're just trying to make it hard. We're not trying to make it impossible. We're trying to make it hard for me to do the attribution. Create your accounts. Use different browsers. Do it from different locations. Do it from mobile. Do it from wireless, so forth and so on. If you're like me and you publish your travel schedule, don't do it on your travel schedule. Do it at another time. Put bad information out. Misspell your name. You can use Hushmail, ProtonMail, Sudo, Google Voice if you want. Bitcoin. Have a plethora of social media accounts. I have at least 7 accounts right now. Some have my picture, some don't. Some have my name, some don't. If you want to go the route, have a New Mexico LLC. It's tied to your name, and you can be anonymous to your registered agent. Be cautious when you're doing transactions that create public records, like home buying, having a landline phone, something of that nature. Information is going to be in data breaches, credit reporting. If you work in a large company, SEC filings. If you pay in cash, you can avoid this to a degree. You probably still need a bank account. And then Adrian is not impressed with this advice. Don't go, if you're in the US, don't go applying for a new social. Don't legally change your name. Don't avoid social media altogether. That's just the end game of it. You can use your canaries, you can use your interactive technologies, you can have your decoys. I recommend canaries if at all possible, but I believe I'm running out of time, so I apologize for not finishing the final few slides. Does anyone have any questions in the interim? Okay, in the interest of time, thank you for your time. I apologize, I got a little slow on this. Trying to kick the sinus infection and laryngitis definitely played a role, but thank you for coming out and enjoy the rest of the conference.